This helps diffuse any weird power dynamics, and it keeps you from getting detached from what you're pretending to do. Sometimes when you're working with a more junior developer, they'll express discomfort with the technique you're using because they're not familiar with it. It is really easy to try to go into teacher mode here, but maybe don't. Remember, your goal in this interaction is not actually to create beautiful code. The goal is generally to create code that the both of you can maintain. Your pair is a much better authority than you on what your pair does and doesn't feel comfortable maintaining. If that means that your code is a bit repetitive, or that there's an object struggling to get out, deal with it. It's fine. The code base will live. As the more experienced person, you have a greater ability to adapt to different code styles, and you therefore have a greater responsibility to do so when it makes things more comfortable for newer folks on your team. Also, honestly, how sure are you that you're not over-engineering? Be honest. Maybe your pair isn't expressing confusion because your code isn't too advanced for them. Maybe they're expressing confusion because your code is confusing. Don't dismiss valuable feedback because you think you are too good to take feedback from a junior developer. Don't use teaching them to pretend that this is anything other than what you're doing. The most important thing to teach a junior developer is never the material itself. It's technical judgment and the confidence to trust their own technical judgment. The only ways to build that are presenting your opinions as opinions rather than facts, acknowledging your own mistakes, and actively working with the feedback that they give you. Now, you can't learn how to persuade your peers to do things you think are better than what they're doing right now until you learn to teach them new things in a way that is respectful and unthreatening. Ultimately, teaching is teaching and developers are developers. And so the same techniques that serve you well when teaching newer developers will mostly serve you here. There are some differences though, and some of them include the following. First off, your peers know more things already, and they need to learn fewer things at once. This sounds facile, but it's not. It means that, again, they have more room in their heads. Since they're not doing as much to learn new things, they have a lot more space to take bigger steps within the code base. That doesn't just change how fast you're working or how much you need to unpack for folks. It can sometimes even change the order in which you do things. Sometimes it also may mean that things are kind of stop and start. Your pair is going to have some feelings about working on things that they're familiar with versus things that they're less familiar with. And their comfort zone is going to have a lot of impact on what you work on when. Now, pairing with a peer developer also gives you a lot more chances to be a jerk by assuming that they don't know something that they do know. So one thing to keep in mind here is that instead of assuming, ask. How much have you worked with React? How much have you worked with jQuery? Don't let them tell you. What you perceive as lack of experience may have been, in fact, a bad past experience. Now, developers who have been working in this industry for a while have often picked up habits and opinions along the way. They're going to be evaluating anything new you bring to them in the context of the things they already know. They're going to be judging it in the context of what they already know. This isn't good or bad, this is just a fact. Sometimes they're going to be jumping to conclusions, and this includes negative ones. Now, you may think, oh God, they're jumping to conclusions, and feel very tempted to tell them this. I would not do that. Instead, ask them about their conclusions. What they say is going to tell you a lot about what they care about in code and what their goals in learning this new thing are. If you can give them a path to accomplishing their goals and writing code that they think is good, it'll go a long way to helping them understand the value and whys of the new technology, even if they seem to be jumping to negative conclusions about it. In the process, they may write code that you think is ugly as heck and super not idiomatic. Again, deal with this. Teamwork is compromise, right? Another thing to remember is that learning something unfamiliar can be really scary to an experienced developer. They're used to understanding the computer, and all of a sudden they don't anymore. This goes extra if the new thing requires them to change their approach or technique. If your pair is used to TDDing in Ruby, and all of a sudden they need to learn something like CSS that is not at all amenable to test automation, then they're being denied their coping mechanisms for dealing with how terrible computers are. This is something that you should be actively empathetic about, right? And so try to adapt as much as you can to practices that work for that person. If possible, take breaks from working on the new thing to give them a chance to be back in their comfort zone for a minute. If your pair feels safe learning the new thing, they are way less likely to judge it prematurely and way more likely to actually learn it. If your pair is being really cranky, though, ask, what if you're wrong? What if the things that you value about this new approach are cool, but not actually in any way relevant to the thing the product needs? What if there are trade-offs to the new approach that you hadn't realized, but that are obvious to the other developer precisely because they're confused? Now, sometimes you want to shift your teammates to trying out a new practice. Maybe you want to try a new API design strategy, start using a new pattern. Maybe you want to implement automated code style checks. The exact techniques and technologies don't really matter to the process of getting buy-in. What does matter is being cheerful, respectful, and unthreatening while you try to educate your teammates about the benefits of the new approach. Learn this thing because it's better than the thing you're doing. Is much bigger ask than learn the new thing because it contains an implied value judgment. Because it's a bigger ask, you need to do a lot more to demonstrate respect. Establish that you want to learn as well as teach, and generally make the interaction safe for the person taught. Remember, everyone has something to teach each other, and everyone has something to learn from each other. The practices your peer developer is working with are practices that they learned because they serve them, and they may still serve them. Don't lose track of that while you're trying to teach them. My business partner, Jennifer, has this really great framework that I am totally stealing here for understanding where communication breaks down. When communication breaks down, it can be because someone misunderstood you, because they disagree with you, or because they aren't willing to do the thing that you want them to. If you'd like to learn more about this framework, I recommend that you check out Jennifer's talk from RubyConf LA last year called Humans Aren't APIs and Your Request is 400 Denied. Right, Jennifer? I think that's, yes, cool. If you're trying, and where this comes in here is that if you're trying to educate someone about best practices, it can be really easy to think that they have misunderstood you when in fact they disagreed. It is really easy to double down in these circumstances and keep on explaining why the new thing is so cool. Is also a super bad idea. They may have tried the approach before and not liked it. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you're wrong and they're right. And it doesn't even necessarily mean that you should back off. But it does mean that if you want any chance of getting buy-in, you need to listen super actively to any concerns that they express and respect that those concerns are coming from a place of experience. You shouldn't necessarily respond to these concerns directly. Instead of having some quick and glib answer for everything, try working with them to address their concerns. If you sit there and act as a reference on this technique while they work through their own solution, then that solution is going to address the concerns that they have much more exactly and precisely than you arguing with them ever could. It'll also be a solution that they have a lot more investment in pushing forward within your organization, so you get buy-in in some ways for free. Remember, again, understands, agrees, willing. Ideally, you'll get all three. And if they disagree or are unwilling, respect that you might be wrong. They might have reasons. Okay, so moving forward in the talk, we're at the last quadrant. Teaching early career or encouraging better practices in early career developers. How does this differ from teaching peer developers better practices? The secret to teaching new developers better practices is giving them exactly the same space and respect that you would give a more experienced developer. Now, you often need to give them more of the pieces before they understand. They may not have an ingrained sense of the context in which that practice was developed. But again, the most important thing to teach a newer developer is never material itself. It's judgment and the confidence to trust that judgment. You need to trust their judgment and mean it if you want to help ingrain that confidence. You need to trust that if they're not persuaded of the superiority of the method you are trying to teach them, it's because it is not actually superior, at least not for them at that moment. Maybe it's too advanced for where they are at that time. Maybe it's, again, just that they're right and you're wrong. Now, I'm Betsy Haibel. You've already heard me talk a lot this conference, so I don't want to belabor anything. But Jennifer and I co-founded Cohere about a year and a half ago with our colleague Z Spencer, and we have a newsletter and stuff. You should follow us on the social medias and talk to us if you have coaching and training needs. I make fun of Avi a bit in this talk, but we're actually great friends, and we collaborated on a Ruby course called Mastering the Object-Oriented Mindset that actually puts a lot of the ideas that I've talked about in this talk into practice, because a lot of the content is us pairing with each other and disagreeing with each other rather than us lecturing you. We're working on a similar project right now called Untangling Asynchronous JavaScript. Thank you for your time.